Hoot, Chapter 17. Chapter 17. Curly stared hard at the phone, as if staring would make it quit ringing. Finally, he braced himself and picked up the receiver. On the other end was Chuck Muckle, of course. "Do I hear the sound of bulldozers, Mr. Brannett?" "No, sir." "Why not? It's Monday morning here in beautiful Memphis, Tennessee. Isn't it Monday morning in Florida, too?" "I got some good news," Curly said, "and I got some bad news." "The good news being that you found employment elsewhere?" "Please, let me finish." "Sure," said Chuck Muckle, "while you're cleaning out your desk." Curly hastily spilled his version of what happened Saturday night. The part about the missing bulldozer seats definitely took some shine off the rest of the story. Not wishing to make things worse, Curly didn't mention that his pistol had somehow ended up submerged in a portable toilet. A fuzzy silence lingered at the Memphis end of the conversation. Curly wondered if Mother Paula's vice president for corporate relations had hung up on him. "Hello?" Curly said. "You there?" "Oh, I'm here," Chuck Muckle replied. "Let me get this straight, Mr. Brannett. A young man was arrested for attempted burglar on our property, right, and assault and trespassing too. But then on the very same evening, another person, or persons, unknown, removed the seats from the bulldozers, backhoes, and everything else." Yes, sir, that would be the not-so-good news," Curly said. "Did you report this theft to the police?" "Course not. Didn't want it to get in the newspaper." "Maybe there's hope for you yet," said Chuck Muckle. He asked Curly if it was possible to operate the machines without the driver's seats. "Only if you're some kind of octopus." "Okay, I'm correct in assuming that there'll be no bulldozing today." "Or tomorrow," Curly replied grimly. "I got new seats on order from a wholesaler in Sarasota, but they won't be here till Wednesday." "What a happy coincidence," Chuck Muckle said. "That happens to be the last day that Miss Kimberly Lou Dixon is available to us. Her mutant insect movie begins shooting next weekend in New Mexico." Curly swallowed. "You want to do the groundbreaking this Wednesday? What about the site clearing?" "Change of plans. Blame it on Hollywood," said Chuck. "We'll do the ceremony first, and as soon as everybody leaves, you can crank up the machines, assuming they haven't been stripped down to the axles by then." "But it's just, Wednesday's the day after tomorrow." "No need to soil yourself, Mr. Brannett. We'll arrange all the details from our end, the advertising, the press releases, and so forth. I'll get in touch with the mayor's office and the Chamber of Commerce. Meanwhile, your job is incredibly simple. Not that you won't find a way to screw that up." "What's that?" "All you gotta do is lock down the construction site for the next 48 hours. Think you can handle that?" "Sure," Curly said. "No more alligators, no more poisonous snakes, no more stealing," Chuck Muckle said. "No more problems. Comprehendo?" "I got a quick question about the owls." "What owls?" Chuck Muckle shot back. "Those burrows are abandoned, remember?" Curly thought, "I guess somebody forgot to tell the birds." "There's no law against destroying abandoned nests," the vice president was saying. "Anybody asks, that's your answer. The burrows are deserted." "But what if one of them owls shows up?" Curly asked. "What owls?" Chuck Muckle practically shouted. "There are no owls on that property. Don't you forget it, Mr. Brannett. 0 owls. Nada. Nobody sees one. And if you tell them if they did, you tell them, I don't know, it was a robin or a wild chicken or something." "A chicken?" Curly thought. "By the way," said Chuck Muckle, "I'll be flying down to Coconut Grove so I can personally accompany the lovely Miss Dixon to our groundbreaking. Let's pray that you and I have nothing more to talk about when I arrive." "Don't worry," Curly said, though he was plenty worried himself. Beatrice's sleep was gone when Roy woke. He had no idea how she had slipped out of the house unnoticed, but she was glad that he had made it. Over breakfast, Roy's father read aloud the brief newspaper account of Dana Matherson's arrest. The headline said, "Local youth nabbed in break-in attempt." Because Dana was under 18, the authorities weren't allowed to release the name of the media. In fact, that rattled Roy's mother, who believed Dana's mugshot should have been plastered on the front page. They identified him only as a student at Trace Middle and said that the police considered him a suspect in several other recent vandalism. They didn't mention Mother Paula's that was the target. Dana's arrest was the major buzz around school. Many kids were aware that he'd been picking on Roy, so they were eager to get Roy's reaction to the news that his tormentor had been nailed by the cops. Roy was careful not to gloat or joke about it, or to draw any attention to himself. If Dana blabbed about the imaginary cigarette stash, he might try to blame Roy for the burglary and theft. The police had no reason to believe anything the kids said, but Roy wasn't taking any chances. As soon as the bell rang ending homeroom, Garrett took him aside to share a weird new detail. "Rat traps," he said, his hand covering his mouth. "What are you talking about?" Roy asked. When they caught him, he had rat traps stuck on his shoes. That's how come he couldn't run away. I'm so sure. Seriously, dude, the cops told my mom he stepped on him while he was sneaking around the trailer. Knowing Dana, Roy could actually picture it. Broke 3 of his toes, Garrett said. Oh, come on. Absolutely, we're talking about humongous rat traps. Garrett held his hands out a foot apart to illustrate. Whatever. Roy knew that Garrett was famous for exaggerating. Did the police tell your mom anything else? Like what? Like what Dana was after. Smokes is what he said, but the cops didn't believe him. Who would, Roy said, hoisting his bag up over his shoulder. All morning he looked for Beatrice Leap between classes, but he never saw her in the hallways. At lunch hour, the soccer girls were playing together in the cafeteria, but Beatrice wasn't among them. Roy approached the table and asked if anyone knew where she was. At the dentist, said one of her teammates, a gangly Cuban girl. She fell down some steps at home and broke a tooth, but she said she'll be ready for the game tonight. Great, said Roy. He didn't feel so good about what he had just heard. Beatrice was a phenomenal athlete, and Roy couldn't imagine her being a klutz and falling down the stairs. After seeing what she could do with a bicycle tire, he also couldn't really picture her breaking a tooth either. Roy was still thinking about Beatrice when he sat down in American history. He found himself struggling to concentrate on Mr. Ryan's quiz, though it wasn't really that difficult. The final question was one that Mr. Ryan had asked him in the hallway on Friday. Who won the Battle of Lake Erie? Without hesitation, Roy wrote Commodore Oliver Perry. It was the only answer he was sure he got right. On the bus ride home, Roy kept a wary eye on Dana Matherson's hulking friends, but they didn't notice him or even look in his direction. Either Dana hadn't gotten the word out about what Roy had done, or his buddies just didn't care very much. The police captain was reading the arrest report when Officer Delinko and the sergeant came in. The captain motioned for both men to sit down. Nice work, he told Officer Delinko. You've made my life a whole lot easier. I just got off the horn with Counsel Grandy, and he's one happy camper. I'm glad, sir, Officer Delinko said. What do you make of this Matherson kid? What's he told you? Not much. The interrogation of Dana Matherson hadn't gone as smoothly as Officer Delinko had hoped. In the training films, the suspects always caved and confessed to their crimes. However, Dana had remained stubbornly uncooperative, and his statements were confusing. At first, he said he was snooping around the Mother Paula's property in order to heist a load of Gladiator cigarettes. However, after speaking with the lawyer, the boy changed his story. He'd claimed he'd actually gone to the trailer to bum a cigarette, but the foreman mistook him for a burglar and came after him with a gun. Matherson's a hard case, Officer Delinko told the captain. Yeah, the sergeant said. He's been around the block a few times. The captain nodded. I saw his rap sheet, but here's what bothers me. The kid's a thief, not a practical joker. I can't picture him dumping alligators in porta potties. Stealing porta potties, maybe. I wondered about that too, Officer Delinko said. The Mother Paula's vandal had displayed a dark sense of humor that didn't quite fit the boy Matherson boy's dim-witted criminal history. He seemed more likely to strip the wheels from the patrol car than paint the windows black, or hang his shirt like a pennant on the antenna. What's the motive for the funny stuff? The captain wondered aloud. I asked him if he had a gripe up against Mother Paula pancakes, and he did say that IHOP was better. That's it. He likes IHOP pancakes better. Except for the buttermilks, Officer Delinko reported. He had nice things to say about Mother Paula's buttermilks. Gruffly, the sergeant interjected. Aw, the kid's jerking our chain, that's all. The captain pushed back slowly from his desk. He could feel another crusher of a headache coming on. Okay, I'm making a command decision here, he said. Considering we've got nothing better to work with, I intend to tell Chief Deacon that Mother Paula's vandal had been apprehended so we can close this case. Officer Delinko cleared his throat. Sir, I found a piece of shirt at the crime scene, a shirt that was way too small to fit the Matherson boy. He didn't mention that the remainder of the shirt had been tied, tauntingly, to the antenna of his squad car. We need more than a rag, the captain grunted. We need a warm body, and the only one we've got is sitting in juvenile detention, so officially he's our perpetrator. Understand? Officer Delinko and his sergeant agreed in unison. I'm going to go out on a limb here, so if you know what that means, the captain said. If another crime happens on this property, I'll look like a complete bozo. If I end up looking like a bozo, certain people around here are going to spend the rest of their careers cleaning dimes out of parking meters. Am I making myself clear? Again, Officer Delinko and his sergeant said yes. Excellent, said the captain. So your mission, basically, is to make sure there's no more surprises between now and Mother Paula's groundbreaking ceremony on Wednesday. No sweat, the sergeant rose to his feet. Can we tell David the good news? Sooner the better, said the captain. Officer Delinko, you're back on the road. Effective immediately, the sergeant had written a letter commending the outstanding job you had done in capturing our subject. This will become a part of your personal file. Officer Delinko was beaming. Thank you, sir. There's more. Because of your experience on the case, I'm assigning you to a special patrol at Mother Paula's construction site. 12 hours on, 12 hours off, beginning tonight at dusk. You up for that? Absolutely, Captain. Then go home and take a nap, the captain advised, because if you doze off out there again, I'll be writing a much shorter letter for your file, a termination letter. Outside the captain's office, Officer Delinko's sergeant gave him a hearty slap on the back. 2 nights and we're home free, David. You psyched? One question, sir. Will I be under duty out there alone? Well, we're hurting on the night shift right now. Kirby got stung by a yellow jacket, and Miller's out with a sinus infection. Looks like you'll be riding solo. That's okay, Officer Jelenko said, though he would have preferred to have a partner under the circumstances. Curly probably would be staying at the trailer, though, and he wasn't the best company. You drink coffee, David? Yes, sir. Good. Drink twice as much as usual, the sergeant said. I don't expect anything to happen, but you better be wide awake if it does. On the way home, Officer Delenko stopped at a souvenir shop along the main hallway, and then he swung by the juvenile detention center to take one more crack at Dana Matherson. It would be such a relief if the boy admitted to even one of the earlier vandalisms. Dana was brought to the interview room by a uniformed guard who took the position outside the door. The kid was dressed in a rumpled gray jumpsuit with the word inmate stenciled in capital letters across the back. He wore only socks because his toes were still swollen from the rat traps. Officer Delenko offered him a stick of gum, which the kid crammed into his cheeks. So, young man, you've had some time to think. About what? Dana blew a bubble and popped it. You know your situation. I don't need to think, the boy said. That's how come I got a lawyer. Officer Delenko leaned forward. Forget the lawyers, okay? I'll put in a good word with the judge if you'll just clear up some of my other cases. Are you the one who painted the windows of my patrol car? The boy snorted. Why would I do a dumb thing like that? Come on, Dana. I can make things easier for you. You just have to tell me the truth. I got a better idea, the boy said. Why don't you just kiss my butt? Officer Delenko folded his arms. See, that's exactly the kind of disrespect for authority that got you here in the first place. No, man, I'll tell you what got me here. That little boy, Roy Eberhardt, is what got me here. Not this thing again, Officer Delenko said. Obviously, we're wasting our time. Duh, Dana Matherson sneered. He pointed at a small shopping bag in the patrol car and placed it on the table. You finally bring me some smokes? No, but I got you something else, Officer Delenko reached into the bag. A little bunny to keep you company, he said, casually dropping it on the boy's lap. Dana Matherson howled and bucked and tried to knock it away, toppling his chair over in the panic. He leaped up from the floor and scrambled out the door, where the guard clamped a brawny hand on his shoulder and let him off. Officer Delenko was left alone to ponder the object laying on the linoleum tile, a toothy, scaly, and lifelike, except for the $3.95 sticker glued to its snout. It was a rubber alligator, which Officer Delenko had purchased at the tourist shop. Dana Matherson's reaction to the harmless toy convinced the patrolman that he couldn't possibly be the Mother Paula vandal. Anyone so freaked out by a puny fake wasn't capable of handling a real alligator, especially in the forbidding darkness of a traveling Johnny. The true culprit was still out there, dreaming up a new scheme. Officer Delenko had 2 very long, nervous nights ahead of him. The Eberhards owned a home computer, which Roy was allowed to use for homework assignments and for playing video games. He was good at browsing the internet, so with no difficulty he was able to Google up plenty of information about the burrowing owl. For instance, the type found in Florida went by the Latin name, not even going to try to pronounce it, and had darker feathers than the Western variety. It was a shy little bird, and like other owls, was most active after dark. Nesting usually occurred between February and January, but fledglings had been observed in dens as late as October. Systematically, Roy scrolled through the search items one by one until he finally hit the jackpot. He printed out 2 single-spaced pages, zippered them into his backpack, and hopped on his bicycle. It was a quick ride to Coconut Grove City Hall. Roy locked up his bike and followed the signs to the building and zoning department. Behind the computer stood a pale, freckled-faced man with pinching shoulders. When the man failed to take notice of him, Roy boldly stepped forward, requesting the file for Mother Paula's All-American Pancake House. The clerk looked amused. Do you have a legal description? Of what? The property. Sure, it's the corner of East Oriole and Woodbury. The clerk said, that's not a legal description. It's barely even a proper address. Sorry, it's all I got. Is this for a school project? The clerk said. Why not, mused Roy. Yes, he said. He didn't see the harm in a tiny fib if it helped save the owls' lives. The clerk told Roy to wait while he cross-checked the street location. He returned to the counter carrying a fat stack of files in his arms. Now, which one of these did you want to see? He asked with a slight smirk. Roy stared in bewilderment. He had no idea where to begin. The one with all the construction permits, he said. The clerk pawed through the stack. Roy had a gloomy feeling that the forms and documents were written in such technical terms that he wouldn't be able to understand them anyways. It'd be like trying to read Portuguese. That file's not here, the clerk said, carefully tidying the tall pile. What do you mean? Roy asked. The folder with all the permits and inspection notice. It's been checked out, I guess. By who? I'll have to talk to my supervisor, the clerk said. And she's already left for the day. The office closes at 4:30, and it's already, let's see, 4:27. For emphasis, he tapped the face of his wristwatch. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow, Roy said. Maybe you should choose another topic for your project. The clerk's tone was artificial politeness. Roy smiled coolly. No thanks, mister. I don't give up that easy. From City Hall, he rode his bike to the bait shop, and using a stash of leftover lunch money, he bought a box of live crickets. 15 minutes later, he was sneaking through the junkyard. Mullet Fingers wasn't holed up in the ice cream truck, though his rumpled sleeping bag was still there. Roy waited inside for a while, but without AC, it was unbearably hot and sticky. Before long, he was back on his bike, heading to the corner of East Oriole and Woodbury. The gate was padlocked. There was no sign of the grumpy bald foreman. Roy walked around the outside of the fence, scouring for Beatrice's stepbrother or any clever surprises he might have left for the Pancake House people. Roy wouldn't have noticed anything unusual had he not spooked one of the owls, which flared out its burrow and landed on the cab of a bulldozer. That's when Roy saw that the seat was missing. He immediately checked the other earth-moving machines and found the same thing. So that's what the kids was up to the other night, Roy thought gleefully. That's why he told me to bring a wrench. Roy walked back to the gate and opened the container of crickets and held it up to the fence. One at a time, the insects hopped out of the box, through the chain link holes, and landed on the ground. Roy was hopeful that the owls would find them soon, and when they came out of their dens for supper. He probably should have left when he heard the first honk, but he didn't. He knelt there and patiently waited for every last little cricket to vacate the box. By then the honking had swollen up to a steady blare, and a blue pickup truck was screeching to a stop. Roy dropped the box and jumped on his bike, but it was too late. The truck already blocked his escape. A beat-faced bald guy vaulted from the cab and hoisted his bicycle up by its seat. Roy pedaled furiously in suspension. His feet were a blur, but he wasn't going anywhere. "What's your name? What are you doing here?" the foreman hollered. "This is private property, don't you know? You want to go to jail, Junior?" Roy stopped pedaling and caught his breath. "I don't know what you're up to," the boy man snarled. "I know your sneaky game." "Please, mister, let me go. I was just feeding the owls." The crimson drained from the foreman's cheeks. "What owls?" he said not too loudly. "There ain't no owls here." "Oh, yes, there are," Roy said. "I've seen 'em." The bald guy looked so extremely nervous and agitated. He put his face so close to Roy that Roy could smell the cooked onions on his breath. "Listen to me, boy. You don't see any owls, okay? What you saw was a wild chicken." Roy stifled a laugh. "I'm not so sure." "That's right. See, we got these dwarf chickens." "Mister, what I saw was an owl, and you know it," Roy said, "and I know why you're scared." The foreman let go of Roy's bicycle. "I ain't scared," he said stonily, "and you don't see no owls. Now get out of here and don't come back unless you want to go to jail like the last kid I caught trespassing." Roy carefully guided his bicycle around the pickup truck and then took off at full speed. "They was chickens!" the bald guy bellowed after him. "Owls!" Roy proclaimed triumphantly. Up, up, up the steep mountainside he went. That's what he was imagining anyways. That's what gave him the strength to push out so hard. In reality, Roy was rolling down East Oriole Avenue, which is flat as Mother Paula's pancakes. He was very worried about the construction foreman would change his mind and chase after him. Any second, Roy expected to hear honking behind him, curses in the wind. The pickup truck trailing so close that he could feel the heat off of its V8 engine. So Roy didn't look back and he didn't slow down. He pedaled as fast as he could, his arms and his legs taut, and his legs burning. He wouldn't stop until he reached the crest of his imaginary Montana mountain and coasted downhill into the coolness of the valley. Let me pull up the questions for Chapter 17. All right, so Chapter 17, reading comprehension questions. Why did Beatrice's friends say she was not in school? And did Roy believe them? And 2, what animal did Curly claim was actually at the construction site? He's trying to hide the fact that there's owls there. Thank you for reading with me today.